Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Muhi Khwaja, and welcome to the Muslim Philanthropy Podcast. Today, on our episode, we have guests from the Good Tree Institute. And the Good Tree Institute is a community-focused Quranic institute fostering spiritual connection and personal discovery through the Quran. Today, we have with us Dr. Nadia Katrangi and also Shatha Barbour. And Dr. Katrangi is based out of the Arizona community, and she's received her certification and memorization in Tajweed Ijaza from Sheikh Al-Kurdi. May Allah bless his soul. She's studied medicine and eventually into a career of pathology. She found her academics and faith continuing to cross paths. And she prides herself on finding the beauty in the Quran, providing thoughtful conversations and encouraging open space for all who attend Good Tree retreats, classes, or camps. The most rewarding thing she sees time and time again is when someone connects to themselves through those around them and to their creator. And she quotes, "There's so much love in the divine. When you live your life from that place, you have that on your side." Welcome, Dr. Katrangi.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Shatha Barbour serves as a secretary, and she found herself in the same shoes as many different Good Tree members today, longing for a sense of community and to deeper explore her faith. And she said about her experience there that she was completely blown away, and she saw the early seedlings of Good Tree being formed. She'd never seen so many female leaders discover their Muslim faith in such a progressive way. And it was a spirit her and her husband wanted to bring to their children. She was born in Syria and was lucky to have a father who pushed her academically and spiritually to become the best woman she could be. And she recalls family dinners with thoughtful dialogue. And she now holds a healthcare degree and has later become an entrepreneur. Thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Likewise. And I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly as well.
Yeah, you actually did. It is Shatha.
Okay. The TH threw me off.
Yeah, it's like the Syrian thing where they flip the THs to Zs. Kind of like what they do in Spain. But
no worries. So again, thank you so much for being on the show. And we really enjoy the opportunity to get to learn more about nonprofit leaders throughout the country doing great work. Good Tree Institute is new to me myself. So this for me is a treat to kind of learn more about the organization, and would love to first dive into kind of your personal journeys, share a little bit more about, where you grew up, what your experience with Islam was, and bring us to today on the personal side. And then we can talk about the professional side of things as well, and kind of what led to the founding of Good Tree Institute too. So Dr. Katrangi, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so subhanAllah, so I grew up in Damascus, Syria, and to a lot of people's surprise, they don't get that actually Islam is not so prominently there as it is right now. Now it's much better, but how I grew up, it wasn't something that people were proud of. So it was a struggle for me growing up there, just knowing that Islam is the truth, but at the same time, expressing it was something that was just not so easy if you want to fit in. So it's something that I really struggled with throughout my teen years. And I remember when I found there was this moment where all the reality kind of like started showing up. The truth showed up for me when I was in 11th grade, and I just like it clicked for me, the actual real meaning of Islam. Not the kind of do's and don'ts. I remember in my teen years, I was always struggling. Yeah, I have to put hijab on, but I really, it's just like, I can't do that. And I don't want to tell people that I don't pray. All of the struggles that we deal with, as teens is something that I really experienced firsthand. It's just like you're drawn into everything that's happening around you, but at the same time, you know what is true, but there's that constant struggle until it clicked. There were always, alhamdulillah, people of God around, and it was hard for me first to attend, but later on it started seeping in. And it's just like, I saw this beauty of the deen. I saw this beauty of the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's like, oh, this is what this is about. It's beyond the rules. It's beyond just doing this and that's where I understood and I started to get like, you can't really start with just what you have to do. You really have to thrive that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your heart. So that really was the beginning of it for me. And it's just like my life was just never the same ever since that started. And there's something about the Quran that also was intriguing to me all the time. You know how you hear a lot of times, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's just like always there. Yeah, well, the companions just heard these ayahs from the Quran and they just like became Muslims. I'm just like, what? I'm reading the Quran all the time. I don't see that. It was always so intriguing for me. And what was so nice is that I always look, there's something that I'm not getting. There is something that something is missing there. Why are they getting it? I'm not. And to my surprise, a few years later, actually, a couple of years later, after I came to the US, I was 25 years old when I came, and I attended a lecture that Dr. Jeffrey Lang was giving, and he was talking about him becoming Muslim. I don't know if you're aware of him. He's one of my biggest influencers on me, mashallah. And I remember he was talking about his journey with the Quran, how actually when he was reading the Quran, moved from, and it was in English, moved from a person who saw this book as like, okay, so there's this smart writer, author, to I couldn't help to see the love of the divine. I was like, okay, there's something definitely missing here. And this is where really, I mean, I've been teaching through Quran throughout the time and working on it and memorizing it. But that's where I start, okay, what am I missing? What about me in this ayah that I'm just not hearing? And that constant work, with the people, whether I was working with teens or working with women, I was working with children, and we kind of constantly, okay, what about you? What are you seeing in this for yourself? What are you missing in here? And that conversation started growing and growing, growing until it became something that like it's addictive. You just can't stop. You just want to go from one ayah to the other, to the next surah, to how is your life? Okay, just measuring it to it. So alhamdulillah, this is how it started, and it started very organically. I remember Shazad just came to Phoenix, and we had a few other amazing ladies, and we kind of continued having this kind of conversation. I'd like to break a little bit, and just like Shazad, if you want to take it on from here a little bit to kind of like add to that, because that start was really very precious when we had it, and our kids were kind of like little, and we had to take care of that. So
yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit background on me. I was born in Syria, but I was raised in the US. I grew up in Chicago in my early years in a big Muslim community, and then moved to small town South Georgia in high school. And you had mentioned earlier, my dad was, has like a very academic sort of background. He's a professor, but he was always challenging us. And so my introduction I had a very much like an American Muslim experience where we would go to like ISNA and Muslim conferences and, and I'd spent summers in Syria. So I was also really introduced to a lot of different Muslim groups, whether they were in the US or different shuyukh and Syrias and sheikhas and stuff, and just different groups. And my dad would always throw me in different situations to kind of make me think and interact with different Muslim like thoughts and leaders and things like that. So I kind of had that very American Muslim experience with I think maybe more of a push from my parents. But there was always something that I felt like as much as I had learned from different places, whether it was from even the rihlas that I attended back in the day when we had deen intensives, right? It only got me to a certain point. And then I still always felt, no matter where I was going and what organization or what group I was in, there was still something missing. Like I was like seeking something that I was like, I need on a daily basis to kind of help me get to that next level. And I couldn't figure out what it was. But you're just kind of looking and you're a seeker. And that's something that I feel like you'll find in a lot of people that attend our programs at Good Tree is that they're seeking something. There's still something missing. They're trying to fulfill like tangibly and kind of grasp onto and figure out, how do I get this? How do I fill this this missing thing in my heart and my mind, that connection and stuff with
Mhm.
Allah and the Quran and our deen. And that's when I found it, like we're with Nadia, with Dr. Nadia, and the way we were studying. And it was like where Nadia was telling you about this story is, I had just moved to Phoenix, and somebody introduced me to Dr. Nadia and a few other ladies who ended up becoming actually some of my best friends and co-founders of Good Tree. But it came together as we came to her house, and she was teaching us. I think we were going over Surah Yasin, actually, because I still have my notes on the side of the Quran. And I was just absolutely blown away, because it was a different way of learning about not just the Quran and Allah, but it was also about myself. I felt like most of what we usually traditionally go through is like you're just imbibing information and lectures. But you're not the aspect of the tazkiyah of the like, well, how do you implement this? And what does this mean for you? And what does this mean for me? And how do I, create that transformation? I felt that's what was missing. And that's what we got out of our discussions with Dr. Nadia, and the way we were approaching the Quran, and the way she was, I mean, honestly, Nadia, you were challenging us. You were asking us questions that like nobody had ever asked me before to think about. And I was like, whoa. This is what we got out of this ayah. How many times have I read this surah? How many times have we studied this with other people? Nobody had ever flipped the coin and asked me, what does this mean for you right now, like today,
Yeah.
and what year we're going through?
I really appreciate you sharing that. And like, from my aspect, like growing up from a South Asian family, I didn't have the linguistic ability, and also understanding that Quranic Arabic is very different from the Arabic that maybe you guys grew up with as well. But I think this thirst for knowledge and understanding is something that is relatable, because, my siblings and I knew other family members that also went to programs and the Rihla and other things, and are connected to this fabric of American Islam, and the way of studying about our religion, I think connects so many more people beyond even the masjid goers, or beyond people who just, maybe their interaction with learning tajweed was like in Sunday school, and, getting it where you can. So, a lot of credit to you guys for really taking the additional step of creating a circle of knowledge, and diving deeper into it.
Yeah, and to your point, since you're speaking about Arabic and being able to speak it or not, so one of the things that, because I do believe that there's nothing like the words of the Quran. And it's not only me. I mean, it's just like, this is a known thing. The only thing that's the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the actual Quran. Everything else, any translation, any meaning, is just a human understanding. So what we try to do, that's why ever since I've been teaching this, I would just put, alhamdulillah, this is everywhere now, people do it, where you word for word, you just understand word for word, and you focus on certain root words to get to the world of the Quran. So you can have as least possible between you and the words. So, I mean, we have people who are not Muslims attending the whole retreat. They could sit through it, and it's not hindering, alhamdulillah, as much as we can. Like, okay, give you this is what this word originally came from. This is the root of it. This is like plain simple word for word meaning, so you can have as much as possible no barrier between you and it. So because, I mean, let's be realistic, it is going to take something to learn the Arabic very fully, and to be able to actually connect to it the way that a person who, even us, even the ones who speak Arabic, it took us something to actually be able to do that. So that's why we tried our best to kind of remove that barrier. Okay, let's take care of these two until you're ready to learn and to read and memorize and all of that, and learn the meanings, so that you can have access to it. Because as Shatha is saying, and that's the other aspect, which the Quran is it's not only telling you who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, it's actually your first and most important access about yourself. And this is the part that I know we say it theoretically. You know how a lot of people are like, yeah, everything is in Quran, everything is in the Quran. But you say this, but we don't act like this. We don't act like everything is in the Quran about you. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. Even the self-development aspect, I got it firsthand, not from the Quran. Unfortunately, I learned under, I mean, in very good, alhamdulillah, self-development organizations, and was able, alhamdulillah, to develop with them, and even to be a trainer and to be a leader in these aspects, to get the tools, only to find that you're just saying exactly what the Quran is saying. We just didn't know how, how, I mean, I always use medicine as a metaphor because it's very helpful. You know how you have the immune cells, the T cells, what they do, or the macrophages, what they do when some foreigner bacteria or something or virus comes in, they bring it in, they digest it, and they kind of like put the epitope that the immune system can recognize.
Yeah.
The antibodies or the T cells can recognize it so that they can attack it. And what I found is that this is what was missing for us. There is something in the Quran that's so profound, we just overlook it just because we're taking exactly how people understood it, centuries ago. Great, that aspect is known, but there's something else for our time. This Quran is for every time. I'm glossing over those aspects that I need to understand right now for me, what it means. They got it in their own way because they had their own time. We're just not getting it. So to me, that was the missing link that I just found. We just have to bring this language out of the Quran. When I say the word cover, this is a major aspect that we just gloss over, and we think, oh, it's those people who are covering the truth. When I talk about iman, trust, this is a major aspect that is on a daily basis. You and I and everybody is dealing with kufr and iman. Every single person of us. It's a parameter. It's kind of like going up and down. It's not something that's stagnant. So the aspect, and this is an inherent concept in the Quran, which is the aspect of the purification, now is called as leadership, self-development, whatever, all these kinds of things. But it's inherent in our deen. And it's something, and if I want to say something about what we are and what we are doing, there are many aspects, but for me, my goal is that, inshallah, ya Rabbi, this kind of work becomes something like so systematic and so replicable and so scalable to the point that, just like how you go to the dentist to clean your teeth every 6 months, you have to. Right? And it's established, it's a well-established way. So it's just like we have dentists all over the place to take care of the 7 billion people that are on the planet, right? The same thing needs to happen when it comes to tazkiyah, because this is a concept that's like every single thing that human beings deal with. We have to clean our teeth, we have to clean our bodies, we have to, even internally, now they're getting that, hey, we're overloaded with toxins, we need to detox somehow. All of this is everywhere. Well, there's nothing different in the human psyche and the soul. It's the same thing. It's just somehow we thought we're good and we're suffering, and we're not understanding why we're suffering. We're going to kind of like, it's you, if you're lucky, you can find a way for somebody to help you with that. So our goal is to make this sustainable, to make this like, everywhere. Just like, and it's an area that a lot of the times people, unfortunately, overlook because it's not urgent. When you ask people, they're just like, they will focus on something that's kind of like in a high demand right now, urgent, important. Well, this is not urgent, but it's extremely important. And when we're not focusing on it, we're really not seeing far enough. We're not taking care of our future when we don't do that.
Or many people may, when it comes to Ramadan, they'll check back in, they'll do that scan of their heart, like what's missing, what's needed, that balance. And, I guess in America, many people do that, like New Year's resolutions. Similarly, like, I love your idea of how regular it should be and how we should be looking at it on a day-to-day basis for that self-development, personal development, utilizing the Quran and the story and the deen to kind of guide that. So I want to jump back to kind of this meeting in the home and the Surah Yasin and the notes in your Quran. Like, tell us a little bit, Shatha, of the kind of first meeting and kind of how that transitioned into the institutionalization that we now have of Good Tree.
Yeah. So, I mean, those first meetings, those of us, it was like four women or whatever. I think it was about 4 or 5 of us. After we finished that surah with Dr. Nadia, we just got together, and honestly, at that time, we loved it. We were just like, we need more of this. We want this for ourselves. But then it immediately transitioned into, oh, we need this for our kids. Like most of us, the rest of us, I think, were raised here. We were American raised, right? In the US. And so we were just like, we came from that Sunday school environment. And we were like, oh, we need to change Sunday school. Like, this is how we want our children to be raised. We want them to be raised like this and thinking like this. And so even the languages and the terminology that we're using, how do you translate that to a child so they can deal and learn, and the Quran becomes a part of them, and they know how to handle everything that's coming to them and just make it very real. So it actually started out as a kids program. So immediately, I mean, we got to work like stat. The 4 of us or 5 of us, we were like, okay, that's it. I mean, by the time we finished that surah, we just started having organizational meetings. We formed the nonprofit organization, and we got to work as a kids program. So for a long time, we actually operated as like a kids program, and we would meet 3 times a week. It was our kids. At that time, they were very young. So our kids were the guinea pigs, and our friends' kids. So it literally formed into like an automatic 3 times a week kids program where we really dove into the Quran with them at their level. We did everything that we were doing as an adult, broke it down into a kids program.
And how old were your kids at the time?
So at elementary school.
Yeah, they were in elementary school. I mean, they were like 5.
Yeah.
5 and 7 or so. And same thing with all the others. I mean, Nadia, your kids are a little bit older, so we kind of just managing like almost like a Montessori Good Tree program.
It was beautiful. It was just amazing. Yeah, we had almost a ratio of a 2 to 1. And we had different capacities, different skill set of teachers in each classroom. But but it reached to a point where we realized that and to me, that's what I say all the time. It's like when you have a successful kids program, that's an indication that the community is thriving. And we were hit by the fact that we couldn't produce teachers. We are not getting the help from the families, from the community, from wherever they go. It's like it's not supported, and we couldn't grow because we didn't have it. It required a certain level of interaction. People would come, she's like, yeah, I know how to teach Quran. It's like, that's not the point. It's not about learning Quran and Arabic. You have to know how to interact with the children. You have to understand them. You have to really get into their world and get to know how to see what they need and address that. That's a skill that we didn't see that was available. And that's where
we didn't have the resources or not. And I want to say the one critical turning point, which is, I think it was a huge aha moment, where we pivoted away from the children's program, because eventually we did close down our children's program, but we pivoted because as the kids got older, right, you're going through middle school, different challenges. Those kids got through high school, completely different challenges.
And so we development as well of them as adolescents.
Yeah. And so we're helping them, and we're constantly tweaking. I mean, we would pivot quickly, like as an organization. We'd be like, what do they need? We'd really listen to these kids and be like, what are their challenges? What are they dealing with? What are their needs? Okay, let's work on it and give them the support they need through the Quran, and right. But what we realized is these kids were becoming these powerful kids and they were really fully equipped, and they got it. Like, they just got it, but they were going home, and the parents, there was a disconnect between the parents weren't getting it. The parents were just dropping off their kids and, I'm out, I'll pick you back up in 2 hours or whatever, or 3 hours. And when they didn't have that support, and how do you have these discussions at home then? How do you have these discussions in the community of what they're discovering about themselves, what they're discovering through the Quran and about the Deen, their connection to Allah? but then the parents don't have those tools and resources, and the community doesn't have it. That's when we realized we got to actually work on the adults. There's a big gap here. If this is going to work to change a community, like when, that's what we want. We want this holistic thing. We have to work on the adults, and kind of bridge that gap. And that's what actually when our husbands got involved, right? It just became a family organization then. Then all of our husbands got involved. They do different things. Our kids became mentors. We started training all of these. So then it just became much more of a holistic organization that's working on the community, at all levels. And so now we don't have a kids program, but we have adults, and our adult retreats programs. We focus on the college age and the young professionals, and then teens. And that's where we cut it off at teens.
Yeah, I love this genesis of kind of serving your immediate needs and then kind of learning along the way and identifying it almost like a strategic plan that's like fluid, right? It's like, okay, we did this, we tested this worked, this didn't, now it's evolving. So from like a organizational behavior standpoint, there's a lot of learnings there. And it seems like you guys were quick on your feet to adjust. And, board members are often the hardest working behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, any way that's needed. But in terms of like staffing, if you guys were meeting this regularly, if you guys, you talked about like development of needing teachers and like sourcing them, what was the track of like that flow of, you had these dedicated people that were coming weekly, multiple times a week, but then how did you kind of shift the growth of the organization itself to meet the needs of the community?
Now, did you want to talk about that, or do you want me to talk?
I mean, I'll mention some if you want, and then if you want to add some to it. So that's exactly the point that we saw. Okay, there is a clear need for training, right? And we realized that it's not kind of like something that you give in a couple courses. We tried that, by the way. We actually invented a whole system of how you can do some internships and training and all of that, but still didn't work. What worked actually is that we do a format of mentorship where it's like we're creating the program and mentoring simultaneously. So they're learning while they are preparing for the event. So we do have these, weekend camps or weekend retreats or, monthly events. So we are preparing the content and we're preparing the material for what's needed, yet at the same time, they're learning. They're taking the Quran, they're practicing it on themselves. So that development happened simultaneously, and it really worked because they felt that they are actually doing something, and at the same time, it's very rewarding. And so that's the platform that actually helped to work. And then the other thing that we're adding right now is we're basically growing their capacity in terms of what's missing for them, what they need. There is the self-tazkiyah, self-development concept that we focus on immensely from the Quran. That's very much, to me, is the hardest one and the one that requires the majority of the time. Just like how our scholars in the past used to say, I learned with my teacher for 20 years. 2 of them were in knowledge, and the other 18 were in adab. And this is really the work that we do. And then after they do that work, we just see, okay, well, what's missing for you? Let's see. You need to learn this kind of course. You need to take this course on Aqidah. You need to do this. So let's fill in your gaps and let's make sure that you get what you need so you can have the right background. So basically this is, and that's inshallah what we're trying to get a more comprehensive kind of program where people can get in and get all of that basic learning. So they are qualified to do that. I don't know, Shatha, you might look at it from a different perspective, but this is where my head is right now.
Yeah, I know. Nadia's like the brains of the whole organization of how everybody needs to get trained and where they need to go. But I think what you were saying, you kind of hit it on the head, is that we were really flexible. We kind of just, we pivoted and as the needs changed that we saw for the organization, we would look internal and see, okay, who can step in and who can do this work. And like Nadia was saying, like the way we have our organization set up, it's a lot of it is through mentorship. So with every organization or every program that we would launch, like for instance, the Sadiq program, or we have like a Ibadah challenge, there's always somebody that's kind of worked through, has done the work, has been with us for a while, that has gone through some of the training or the classes or programs so that we can put them, they become now the leaders of that program. So and granted, we do need to hire people for sure. And that's kind of part of our vision, is like, we need to hire dedicated staff for things. But we've just been able to grow internally as our community has been growing, and they kind of go through our programs and then they step into leadership roles within us.
Yeah. So two questions to kind of guide us through. What's the organizational structure look like today? Like staffing, part-time, full-time, and number of board members, and then what programs and services do you offer, and kind of like a timeline of like when that started and stuff. So
Yeah, so Shazad, do you want to go?
No, you go first. You talk about the staffing and I can talk about
Okay. So yeah, so basically, as far as board members, we do have alhamdulillah, we do have one of the original founders. We do still have them. Shaza is one of them, and then we have Aisha, who is also in the kind of business world. She's our business brain over in there, alhamdulillah. And then we have also Dr. Shafiq Tame and Dr. Dr. Shar, they're both in the medical field, surgeons. So they kind of like are people who benefited immensely, and their families benefited. And alhamdulillah, they're very enthusiastic about it, and just like they're seeing how we can grow this. And then we also have Archie, who is a therapist, and he's a convert. He's a new Muslim. So and alhamdulillah, because our focus is really a lot on the self work, and his presence has always been just huge. And he, especially for instance in the camp areas, he's always there. He always helps with the counseling aspect of it. And it's so interesting. He always says that, you know, all the work that I've done in Good Tree is really the backbone of what I work in therapy with people. That's what I take everything from. It's just like he said, it's fascinating to see how much the Quran and psychology are just like almost speak to the same language. He's just like, it's fascinating to see that. So this is alhamdulillah our board. We constantly look into what's needed and what is missing in terms of like who can be of service. We'd like to diversify things for sure. We like to make sure that things are the people who are on the board kind of complete each other. In terms of staffing, we do have alhamdulillah board director for a program director, adult program director, youth program director as staffing. We have marketing director, and we have IT. So kind of like we're there, alhamdulillah, we're growing. We're definitely are looking in this year to hire a couple more in terms of to take care of the financial area, to take care of, you know, these other aspects of the operations that we do have. Yeah, so that's, I think, the kind of like the main point. I'm not sure if there's anything else that you would like to hear in terms of the structuring, but we do have a lot of teams in terms of volunteers. Each program has its own team that sustains the program.
Love that.
Yeah.
And then Shaza, to you, like the timeline, like what year did it start? When did you kind of start branching out into different programs? And then would love to hear the current programs and services that you offer.
Oh, wow. Timeline. I mean, Nadia, you might know this off the top of your head.
First Seeds of Wisdom was 2016.
So Seeds of Wisdom is the adult weekend sort of retreat program. That's kind of our, what would you call it? Almost like a pillar program. That's where we launched into the adult programming. So that was 2016. We do them 3 times a year, pretty much. And now we're expanding. So like they're usually in Phoenix, but actually the past couple of years we've done them with like partner organizations like in the Bay Area. There's one coming up in Houston. So we're expanding that out as other cities kind of requested, and we can find the team and the organization to kind of help us do it. So we have Seeds of Wisdom. We have the Seekers Retreat, which is
So
kind of
can you just,
college-
I mean, can we, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we just need to kind of give the world of what Seeds of Wisdom is. I think it's important that we, so what happened before Seeds of Wisdom is that it was kind of like something that we do weekly. On a weekly basis, we teach from part 30 of the Holy Quran. There's something very unique about part 30 of the Holy Quran. It's really a summary of the Quran. It just gives you the most important points that you can't leave the Quran without getting down fully. That's why it's short, it's easy to memorize, they're very good. Unfortunately, we ended up just memorizing them without really ensuring that we're so clear on them. So the intention of Seeds of Wisdom is to group these surahs in a way, in 9 retreats plus the Surah Al-Fatiha, in a way that you really get these surahs. You really live by these surahs. You always have these, if you will, whether you want to call them distinctions, principles, kind of aspects that are inherently integral to the deen, to the Quran, to how our relationship with Allah, with ourselves, with the people, with our purpose in life, with the career that you're living, with how you're living your life. How can you be fulfilled and at peace? All of this. So we kind of like, and they build off of each other, and you can start with any of them. That's when, alhamdulillah, we kind of like, we managed to make it in a way where they are independent, because we know that it's very hard for people. Our main intention was always to make it convenient for people. We know that life here is very demanding. So we're trying to make something for you that's digestible. You don't have to go overseas to study for a few years, or to go on a study for a year, which is great. If you can do that, that's awesome. But if you can't, at least find something that helps. And we made it in a way where we can go anywhere in the country. We could do it anywhere and people can come to us. So that's kind of like the style that we try to do. And we do have, alhamdulillah, people who go through the 9, not only one time. We have people who will do it multiple times, because there is a constant work. And alhamdulillah, so far we've done them, almost done with a 3rd round with the 9 retreats, alhamdulillah. And again, as I said, that's the first start. And we tell people, okay, you learn the roots. We do have courses about the root meanings of the Quran. We say the highly 199 root words that you have courses for. Just memorize them, get them really well. Because these, if you get them, you get the fabric of the Quran, the understanding of it. Learn how to read. Alhamdulillah, we have very successful reading programs for the Quran. But that happens. The most important thing is that you get into the living by it aspect. So I just wanted to make sure that and alhamdulillah, this past time, what was so beautiful is that it's so diverse. The retreat, the space of Seeds of Wisdom is so diverse, and so it has now its own culture, if you will, to say. Like in last time, we had like about 50% of it was from the younger generation, like 25 and under, which was beautiful to see people who are like, you have up to 70, 80-year-old, and you have a 15, 16-year-old sitting in the same room and having conversations and discussions and like activities and all of that. Alhamdulillah, very beautiful. We have people who are not Muslims, we have people from all kinds of demographics. It's beautiful to just like see all of that dynamic happening and really internalizing the Quran.
Yeah. And then from that, I think we also have like what we call the Seekers Retreat, which is the college version. We do that about once a year. Although some of the college students have been folding into the adult program, all adult retreats. Then we also have what we call Quran and Me, which is a weekly free, right now it's online. It's been online since COVID. Online like Quran program, kind of what we like what we would do in the Seeds of Wisdom, but it's just a longer, like usually it's about 6 weeks or so, and we delve into a surah on a weekly basis, and that's free and accessible.
Surah from the Quran besides Seeds of
Awesome.
Wisdom.
Yeah.
It's really motivated me to want to sign up. So inshallah, I'll join.
That's awesome. I'd love to
yeah,
have
that would
you.
be awesome.
Yeah.
And we are working right now on our podcast. So we haven't released any, but we've been working on it for the past year, just kind of creating the content for that. And that will be free. And it's what we wanted to do with the podcast was also just kind of make the content that we've been working on and developing for years also more accessible, like put it out there to the world, have them go through the surahs the way we would go through the surahs and ask the questions that need to be asked and think about it and peel your internal onion to understand yourself in the Quran better. So those are our adult programs. And then for the teen and the youth program, we have what we call Camp Z, which is for Generation Z, their own camps, and that happens twice a year. And we've been doing that for quite a while. It's kind of like one of our most successful. I put my kids through camps across the United States, like MENA, NYC, all of that. My kids, even to this day, and even here in Dallas, like I send them to programs here. And my kids still say our Good Tree camp is the best camp in terms of content and development than anything else in the US. So we're really proud of our our teen
Yeah,
camp.
we've had 9 so far. We do twice a year, alhamdulillah. We've
Yeah.
had 9.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I mean, some statistics. So Marcy, God bless her soul, so she last time she kind of like asked them very specific questions to see what they're getting out of it, and it's very profound, mashallah, to see the difference that it makes for them. So she had written it somewhere in the survey. Let me show you. Let me read to you. Where was it? She said something about gosh, where is it? Here. Yeah, she said 90% of them in the survey said that they gained more skills in navigating life after camp. 98% gained deeper connection to God after camp, and 100% gained a deeper connection to community and people.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think some of those similar experiences were some of my more formative. And even if they were on the social aspect of just spending time, right? But then you have the moments around the fire with like a talk at night and, you know, those sort of things. So I could definitely see the relevance, but to have them walk away with that high level of survey and impact and connection, I think is super important.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
And the more that we talk, I just kind of, even for myself, you know, we get stuck into the day-to-day of life and this and that and travel for work and whatever else we have in our spheres. But similar to Ramadan, it's like, what can I do to gain that spiritual connection? But this serves as a reminder for me to, you know, seek that connection in the daily. And if I can't, then in the weekly, and, you know, at least on a bi-weekly. And, you know, as, you know, somebody who still identifies as Muslim, alhamdulillah, and prays and goes to the mosque and does all these things, my connection to the Quran hasn't been as consistent, right? So like that's one area in which I would love to see myself grow. And I think there's probably a lot of people like that where they may not be able to read Quran every day, every week, every so often. And it becomes a main practice in Ramadan. But then how can you carry that from Ramadan back into the rest of your day?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, to speak to kind of like even further, they always ask us like, what's the dream program or project? And I would say, you know, there are several anchor points that we definitely have to make sure that we establish. But the most important one is that I'd like to see half of Seeds of Wisdom be non-Muslims, because we do see people. This Quran is not only for Muslims. It's not.
Sure.
I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started by saying He's Rabbil Alameen. He is the caretaker of the worlds. He ended by saying Rabbin Nas. He is the caretaker of the people. Where did we just hoard onto all these gems and are not sharing them? I would say people, it's like, I don't care, even if you don't have to become Muslim, but you're seeking wisdom and growth in every area. And you're just turning a blind eye onto something that's is full of treasure. Come and just like see what's in it for you. This is something that it's on us. We are obliged to actually share this with people. And this is very dear to my heart, to see that, inshallah, that something, again, as I said, I'm not saying that a person has to become a Muslim. You might find your own way to connect. It's up to you. It's not a big deal. It's not a matter. To me, the biggest deal is that find connection, understand who you are. There's no one that can tell you who you are more than the one who created you and made you. So that's the part that I feel we're lagging behind in. And I don't think that our spaces need to be spaces only for Muslims. Yeah, there are places where sometimes you just need to huddle. You need to kind of like make sure that you talk about your own internal issues. But this deen is for people, and it has to be a service for people. Yeah, and to your point, I think that's the point that I'm trying to do. It's really, when you mentioned the aspect of being scalable and aspect of being practical, like what we're trying to do, we're trying to kind of bring practicality to the purification.
Right,
The
yeah.
tazkiyah, let's make it practical. So we have all these kinds of challenges that we're developing where you just go into them and you're just taking on one thing and you're checking in and you're kind of like working on that little thing. And as to your point, that's how it becomes part of who you are without even noticing. You're just growing constantly and you're checking with yourself constantly. It's just this is, I think this is an extremely important point to notice. Notice how we have tons of inspirational talks. We have a lot of the great things that we can learn from. Tafsir, aqidah, sirah, all these kinds of talks. We always have stories. Inspiration is easy. You can get inspired and it can last for you just like, okay, a day or two or something. And then things go down. What's missing is a commitment and a practical, even after commitment. Some people might commit, but if I don't have practical, how do I do this? Give me the steps. I need to see where can I go with this, not in an overwhelming way. I can't add so much. We cannot expect people to be like radically changing their lives and going and doing things that are to be able to get to that purification. It has to be easier. There has to be some more practicality to it. And this is what we're after. We're really after just making it so doable and chewable for people to be able to access that, inshallah.
Inshallah. Shaza, any thoughts that you want to share that maybe we didn't get to cover so far?
No, I think we covered a lot. I would just encourage everyone to just join in, whether it's the Quran and Me program, but especially really attend our retreats. They're just the highlight. They're like, it's unbelievable what people say coming out of the retreats, what they could discover for themselves. It's a very transformative experience. I mean, because we make everything that we put into Good Tree and all the programming, we put months and months of effort into one retreat.
Mhm.
Like that our team meets on a weekly basis. We go through the material, we test everything, the questions, we go through a lot of rigorous testing and pivoting to make sure that we get where it lands where it's supposed to land and people are really gaining benefit out of it. So I just encourage everybody, just attend a retreat, be there, find the discovery that you need to discover about yourself. And I think for a lot of us, we're not used to asking those questions about ourselves. And sometimes it can be a little bit like, oh, I've never thought about that. And it's a little startling in the beginning, but then you land in a soft spot and you just discover this unbelievable connection with not just Quran, with Allah, with yourself, with your peers, with your community. And it's a beautiful experience. And that's something that we want to see happen for our adults and our youth. So, because that's what we need, we need that not just for ourselves, but our community needs that for each other to kind of how do we build ourselves up in a time and place where we are now, where life is stressful. And we have so many challenges that everyone's facing from a youth level to an adult level, and we don't have enough spaces to discuss how are we addressing our challenges. How do we get through this? What is Allah telling us to do? We have the answers, but we don't have the discussion to figure out how do we put this into practice and really help ourselves. So that's what I would just encourage everybody to plug
Yeah.
in.
And it even sounds like the moment to pause and reflect and soul search. And it seems like you curate that opportunity for your attendees.
Yes.
Great. Last words to you, Dr. Katrangi.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you and appreciate the platform and the work that you do. Honestly, I mean, it's just very forward thinking, alhamdulillah, and it's very much needed. We really appreciate you. And thank you for having us here. And we look forward, inshallah, to seeing all of our efforts thrive and reach to the goal and reach to having a healthy, healed people, societies, countries, inshallah. That's the goal. That's what we're all working towards, Bismillah. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And, if it wasn't for the great donors at AMCF who, give to so many wonderful organizations, I wouldn't have learned about Good Tree Institute. So, I have to thank our donors for having me learn more about your organization. And now we're here having this conversation. So again, a big kudos to you, your organization, and looking forward to following your work as well.
So thank you.
All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikum assalam.
Assalam.